Let's get a check of the markets now. Joining us from CommSec is Tom Piotrowski. Tom, good morning. What can we expect when the market opens this morning?
Good morning, Danica. We're going to see the market kick off with a loss this morning, down by a little over 0.1%, which ultimately reflects a disappointing session on Wall Street, I suppose you could say. In the early part of the US session, we saw US stocks doing quite nicely. In fact, the Nasdaq at one stage was up by around 2.3% at its best levels, and the S&P 500 was up by around 1.5%. So that all frittered away in the case of the S&P 500. It finished down by about 0.1%. Tech stocks still higher, with the Nasdaq up by around 2/3%. The difference was made by some comments that were made by the head of the Federal Reserve in San Francisco, and also another Fed official, Raphael Bostic, who heads up the Atlanta Fed. They spoke about the need for yet higher interest rates in the US to get on top of inflation. Somewhere north of 5% was what they were talking about, and that sent a chill down the market's spine, and that's where the losses eventually translated from. But in the early part of the session, investors were encouraged by that continued fall in long-term interest rates, and that was basically the two halves of the session. So in terms of what we can expect locally, slightly lower open, but it'll be interesting to see where the local market takes its cues from. There's been a lot of optimism about the Chinese reopening. We've seen the Chinese stocks do quite well. Yesterday, the Hang Seng was up by around 2%. Technology stocks in particular have been thriving. That's because Chinese authorities have said that the crackdown on the tech sector that has featured for the last couple of years, that's at an end. We're seeing the prospect of more coal imports from Australia being liberated as far as China's concerned, and then there's also the support for the Chinese property sector. So all of those things are coming down to a fair bit of optimism around the Chinese picture for the moment, at least. So it'll be interesting to see to what extent that influences the local market today, because we actually have some important economic news from China. Fixed asset investment, retail sales and industrial production will be amongst today's releases.